Please.
All right, so listen up. Now, you might want to pay careful attention to that and going forward, because you're going to have to answer a set of 12 questions. Now, listen, I don't want these aren't simple questions like, what instrument did Solomon play? Or, why did Solomon attack titties? They're what you can consider higher order thinking questions, if you will. Now, there's 12 questions that I'm going to be asking you over the next day. They're all about slavery. They will all be on the test that I'm going to give you.
When?
I'm giving you guys a test, not next week, because next week's a short week. The following week. That's 20% of your market period grade, Denelson. You'll get one test grade for the whole market period. What? So, let's say you got a 0, hypothetically. The maximum grade you could get for the market period would be an 80. And that's considering you got 100 and everything else. So, now there's also going to be a set of soccer questions, these same exact questions, like, did racism cause slavery or did slavery cause racism? That'll be one of the questions on
Racism caused.
I emailed this to you.
Let me get you.
I don't want a simple answer.
Let me get you one to explain it.
Yes, Estefania. That's your brilliant person. All right, so let's start off. Now, pay attention, participate. And I don't want to hear no playing around today. All right, now, let's see. Andy, do you think that racism caused slavery or slavery caused racism?
Slavery causes racism.
I want to hear from Andy first. I'll ask you after.
Racism causes slavery
Why?
because if slavery didn't, if racism didn't exist, then slavery wouldn't either.
Huh, interesting. Haja, what do you think?
Racist causes slavery. Slavery. What you say?
Did racism cause slavery or slavery cause racism?
Slavery caused racism.
Why?
I agree. Because, like, if it wasn't slavery, they wouldn't think of African Americans that way. How they do, like, they make us do everything for them, so they don't really look up to us as like how they are. Like, they don't have, like, we're not as much as they are in their world. But if there was never no slavery, we would get treated correctly.
Okay, is there racism still today?
Yes.
Is there slavery today?
Yes, in some places there are slavery.
Where?
I don't know where, but some places there are slavery.
Is there hella racism in America?
Yes.
Is there slavery in America?
No, but there is in America.
Okay, I get what you're saying. Though. Gilbert, go ahead.
I think that racism caused slavery because, like, you really wouldn't make them a slave if you didn't think any less of them. So, like, if you thought as them as, like, the same exact thing as white people, how you are, you wouldn't make them work for you.
All right. Now, guys, listen up. What is what's a tribe, Estefania? You know what a tribe is?
Like an Indian tribe, it is lot.
What's a tribe? Tell me.
It is lot. A group of people who get together to, like, worship something.
Okay, group of people, they get together, maybe they have the same religion, maybe they have this, they look the same, they have similar ethnic backgrounds, same beliefs, okay?
I'm just trying to make
They look similar, they work together, and they protect each other. We see tribalism today. We saw it yesterday in this school.
when a group of kids got together and beat up some freshmen.
This guy. Not for real, like, alright, so now a kid got snuck. That was effed up for this kid to get snuck. So what happened? 8th period, well, there was a fight and then eventually it turned into jumping the kid. The juniors are like, oh fuck, we're not getting beat up by some freshmen. We need justice. Us juniors will take out this freshman. Eliminate him. Juniors are better. We ain't getting bitched by some little kids.
Fuck that.
Right? Our class is better. Juniors versus freshmen.
Big booze.
Right? We do this with sports teams. We do this with countries. Yeah, America, screw everybody else.
Survival of the fittest.
Guys, tribalism, we can see it in so many different things. Now, tribes and tribalism has existed from the first human beings. The first human beings were into tribes.
Neanderthals.
Lucy.
Me and Alex is more.
Yes.
Yo, Nate and Adam.
And definitely, part of the reason they had slavery was because these guys are different than us. Let's make them slaves. I think it'd be very hard to argue that racism did not cause slavery. I think that's...
Exactly.
Slavery caused.
You know what I'm saying right now?
Now, I'm going to quote a historian. I'm not going to read it all. But this historian is an expert American historian on the issue of slavery, Peter Kolchin. He says both are true. Racism caused slavery, but slavery also causes racism.
It kept racism alive.
And it makes it a lot worse. Danny,
But I don't understand when people say dark meat and light meat. Like every
Dark
meat
meat
is
what?
white. Dark meat and light meat. Like every meat is light. I don't get what they say by that.
or when you talk about like food?
No, they said they were in the Solomon movie. They said we're dark meat and light meat, whatever, something like that.
You're
Like
white and you're black. That's what
He didn't say, they didn't say dark meat or light meat.
yes, they did.
They said
when they were listening.
when they were hitting Patsy.
Cuz I've seen that movie over 10 times.
Well, go watch it again. You need to watch it again. You know, sometimes when you watch it a couple of times, you need to
Can I
watch
say
it one more time, right?
11 times.
You didn't even
charm.
watch it one time in full.
Are you stupid?
I watched it actually twice.
It's third time.
Does anybody know what she's talking about?
No.
No.
Because these bitches ain't paid.
Yo, watch your tone.
You got cut that.
Excuse me.
Bitch now?
They wasn't even paying.
Cut. You gotta edit that. Edit it.
Listen, I definitely was paying attention. I didn't hear it.
Oh, Mr.
They didn't say it.
Kim heard it though. Kim heard it, right, Kim?
Kim just riding.
Kim.
Kim just
Be
riding.
honest. You heard it, right?
Yo, Kim.
When they were hitting Patsy, they were like until you see the white meat of her.
What the hell are you talking
That's
about?
what they
He
said.
said,
Or something
He
like
said
that.
something like, I want to see blood flowing.
Exactly.
And meat, no, she
Blood.
said.
I want to see blood and meat
But he
flowing.
didn't say anything about
He said
white
nothing about
or
white
meat.
and black.
That never happened.
What? Okay.
Yes, it did.
I've probably seen the movie closer
That
to
time wasn't
15
funny.
times.
I tried defending you.
Alright, anyway,
You
shh.
watch it one more time.
Well, I'm not watching it myself.
Okay, now this historian, he said both are true. Now, let me explain the whole thing how slavery can actually cause racism. Alright, Alex, when was the first time you remember seeing a black person? First time in your life that you saw a black person?
I didn't do it at Jeopardy. There you go.
You were watching Jeopardy? How old were you?
Like 6.
6? That's the first time, right?
I mean, you probably saw it before.
What did you think of that person that you saw in Jeopardy that was black?
I watched Family
It was
Fortune.
different.
He was different? Did you think you were better than him or her? No?
I was innocent, man.
See, now you're probably like the 4th, 5th person I asked that question to today, and everybody said, nah, I didn't really think I was better than them, or I didn't really think, like, yeah, they were a little different, but I didn't think I was better than them or anything.
Wait, what do you mean, like?
I mean, I thought he was better than me. He was on Jeopardy.
The first memory you have of seeing a black person. Do you remember yours, Stephanie?
Excuse me, you're asking me.
Pre-K. Which person was it?
This girl like this person.
And what did you think of this girl?
Nothing, I just thought.
And my point is usually young kids, usually they don't really think in racist terms. But eventually,
However, they're influenced.
people start influencing them and teaching them. So imagine that you're a kid and you grow up in a slave society. You grow up on a plantation and you see people being whipped all the time.
You're gonna think it's okay.
You're gonna think, it's okay, you're gonna think, your race is better than them. Slavery can make it a lot worse. Now, let me tell you how whites in the South, rich whites, made racism a lot worse. Okay, so, in the South, right before the Civil War, when was the Civil War?
18.
Take a guess!
It was where they fought.
Oh, shh! When was it? I want you to take a guess. I don't care if you're wrong, I want you to try it.
1797.
1738. I'm not even.
1760?
1860. Small phone.
1861, close enough, Alex. The Civil War starts in 1861. Now, right before the Civil War started, there was about 8 million whites in the South. Only about 5% of the whites in the South actually owned slaves.
That's a lot.
Only about 5% of those 8 million white people in the South owned slaves. That means
That's like 100.
it's like 400,000.
Yo, mom, I'm pregnant.
400,000.
He said, mom, I'm pregnant.
So 95% of white Southerners didn't own slavery, yet they were still very, very racist, and they believed that slavery was actually a good thing
Because of their peers.
because of propaganda. You know what propaganda is?
Yes.
Tell me.
It's when
I was gonna say it.
Come on.
Tell me, Danny.
It's like when you use like posters or something.
Like posters
to
and
make
put them all
somebody.
around.
Shut up, yo, shut up, shut up.
Let me finish. You can add on after.
When you use like posters or signs or something and make somebody believe something that's not true.
Usually
like,
it riots.
something like that.
Okay, so you use posters, advertisements to make some people believe something
Like in
like
the
that?
Holocaust,
No,
mister,
no.
the Holocaust. They used the Germans used
Trailers.
propagandas to make the Jews look like bad people.
Beautiful. What are you gonna say,
Actually,
Stephanie?
it depends because, like, let's say there's a business
No, you're
and
not
they just
helpful. Stop.
opened, like they made a poster and they put it up and they made it all nice so people could go to the restaurant.
Okay. Yeah,
So
that, I
it's
mean,
not making it's.
That's
technically not
endorsement,
making-
mister.
that's kind of like more like marketing advertisement.
Okay, but
propaganda,
it's
propaganda,
the same thing.
propaganda
No,
is
propaganda
usually
is used in bad.
it's usually like exaggerated and many times not actually true. Like
It's like when they made that trailer for Holocaust.
yeah, like
Of all the
so,
kids playing.
so
But now.
Danny brought up a pretty good example. He said like Nazis, like German propaganda during World War II made people believe that Jews were like really, really, really evil people. And it's okay to do this genocide against
Because
them.
they lost the war, they blame the Jews.
So that's like propaganda. Now, white Southerners in America, in the USA, they use propaganda to influence the poorer white people in the South. They told them things like, yo, if we don't have slavery, blacks will be on the loose, and then they're gonna go around raping all the women.
That's crazy.
They'll kill your son, they'll kill your daughter. And they also said things like, blacks are so dumb that they can't even feed themselves.
And guess what? There's proof.
If we're actually taking care, we're doing a good thing for them. By us enslaving them, we're doing a good thing for them. So, I am saying this. Slavery could not have existed in the South unless a massive amount of white Southerners believed that slavery was a good thing and they were very racist. But the fact that they did have slavery made the racism a lot worse. So, both are true. When you answer that question, I know my man Zabian already started, Zabian, excuse me, already started answering
Try
it.
hard.
Huh?
Try, right?
And you're a try little.
Whoa, what?
I'd rather have a try harder than a try little. I said because a little.
Chill. Big bitch.
Oh, damn.
Hey, I don't hear nothing else. No trash talking, or else you
Wait, Nike thought was probably.
you'll get the lock.
Excuse me, you can say.
You're on camera.
Being on camera.
Yeah.
So whatever you do, we have evidence.
All right, so Donaldson, Mr. Tryhard, answer the question: did slavery cause racism, or did racism cause slavery?
They think they.
Remember why you look like that, huh?
The first one?
Yeah.
You weren't paying attention, Donaldson.
Actually.
Stephanie, did racism cause slavery, or did slavery cause racism?
Oh,
Big Boozy, I'm sorry.
Gentlemen,
slavery, I think slavery caused racism.
why?
Because they chose the blacks to be the slaves. Why couldn't they choose the whites?
Okay.
But you said it was gold.
Jacob, explain why it's both, Jacob.
First part racism because
Who did that?
You did it.
Shame on you.
first of all, I just think that racism was the first part because they just think that they were inferior, they just make slaves, while future generation living in places where are slaves, making believe that their color is more superior.
Xavier, you want to add on to that? Good job, Jacob.
I was gonna say that racism caused slavery because it was around before it, so people thought that whites were always of higher class than blacks.
Okay. The answer is both answers are correct. And you could probably argue that
Yo, we put our leg up at the same time.
yeah, but you're doing it a different way though. You could argue that the racism part came first, but then again, like I said, with like really young kids who their minds, if you believe that kids are born on a blank slate, like John Locke did, I'm about to talk about him soon. Kids aren't really born with racist ideas, but they learn racist ideas from maybe their parents or their uncle, or school, or TV, or whatever.
We're basically
What if they see
fired.
it themselves?
Teacher.
What do you mean by see it themselves?
Like, what if they witnessed
If
it?
they witness somebody being racist, yeah, I'm saying, but kids usually aren't born coming out of their mother's womb thinking racist
No, they're
ideas.
innocent.
They learn it somewhere.
They grow up and
So the answer is both of them are true. Racism definitely motivated people to do slavery, like, hey, we hate these people, they're different, let's make them suffer. But also part of it's because you had slavery, it made people a lot more racist. So both are kind of true. Now, did Mr. D teach you guys about Aristotle last year?
God, yeah.
About what?
Oh my God.
Wait, what?
About who?
What?
Aristotle. Aristotle was a philosopher. Andy, what's a philosopher?
A person who studies fossils.
Fossils? No, philosophy. Someone who studies ancient writing, not exactly what?
Person who does good for the environment.
Does good for the environment? Nah.
Good for
The fuck?
it's around us.
Anthony, what's a philosopher?
I'm strong.
Someone studies something and tries to prove that it's not true. Oh, ancient life.
You're pretty close. A philosopher is someone who studies big questions. They play with ideas in their mind.
Same
They
thing.
ask big questions and they try to answer. For example, is there a God?
Like a god, like this God, yes.
Yeah.
Hey, yo, you guys are like. I mean,
Is there
everybody
a
has
hell?
their own opinion.
Yeah, a lot of people don't.
Not everybody believes in God.
I know, I'm just saying. So philosophers try to. Now, yes, this is like, it's something that's hard to prove, like, scientifically. Like, I don't see how somebody can prove that scientifically.
Yeah,
What?
but
Prove what? Scientific method.
Prove what?
That there's a God. Scientifically, to prove, like, using the scientific method that there's a
Just kill
God.
yourself.
Huh?
Just kill
Hey,
yourself.
yo, don't do that.
Alright, but if you killed yourself and you found out, how would you prove that to others?
How you
Go on your ass. Gonna be your bad.
Okay, now listen. Here's another
Wait,
one.
I remember watching a movie. It was like with a white lady and a white man. She was married to a white man, and he would beat on her. Like he would beat on her, and then somebody found out she was getting beat, but she didn't want to tell her husband, so she blamed it on a black man. She got a black man killed because she didn't want to say it was her
Oh
husband.
man, that's messed up. Sad. Here's another philosophical question. I asked this one in period 4, and we probably went on a 20-minute discussion just on this, and I let it go on because it was a good discussion.
Excuse me, kid.
Are people born gay, or does culture make people become gay?
I mean, that's
Culture, man.
no.
Both.
First culture.
It's both, to be honest. Because
Denelson, why? Hey, Kimberlina,
You don't come out the wrong time.
camera. Why, Denelson? Why both?
I'm trying to.
Wait, it's recorded? Oh shit.
It's been a
What am I say?
want me there.
Denelson, wait.
Yeah.
First of all, you picked the wrong person for the camera.
No, because I also doing a pretty good job.
Denelson, I'm waiting. You said both.
I do
Why?
so.
Of what? He said.
I don't think
Now you're just declaring like a.
Kilmar, what do you think?
About.
Are people born gay, or does like culture make people
I feel
gay?
like culture.
Yeah,
Like,
Why? Tell me why.
Cause I don't think.
No, but then,
Let Keo answer first.
I don't think you're born to be gay.
I don't think you're born to
Well,
be.
why though? Tell me why.
Just like you said, you're not born to think people are racist.
how about we go after Roberta?
Wait, can I say something?
I did ask Norberto.
Can I say something? I think people, some people are born to be gay because some people have their feminine ways. Like some people just can't help like their feminine like
Now,
that.
now that kind of ties into Norberto.
Yo, mister, what do you say? What did Roberta say?
Alright, I'll tell you. Well, let Stephanie say it first.
I agree with Wanda because my brother has a little brother from his side, like his dad's side.
Josh's?
No, my older brother, another brother. He has, like, we have the
But, like,
dad,
I was
so
gonna
his dad had a kid and he's like little. But like, he's like 5 or 6 right now, and you kind of see that he's gonna be gay able
Chihuahua,
to
too.
grow up. Because like the way he stands, he doesn't like
Does he
playing
play with dolls?
cars. Yes, he likes playing with like with dolls and stuff like that. Like you
Wait,
can see.
Mr. Roberto said.
People have their feminine ways.
So Norberto was like, this is what Norberto said. He said he found out.
Shut up!
Now see, why don't you want to hear it? Are you scared you're gonna become gay or something?
Yes. Oh.
He's already
You don't cast the spell. That's that dope.
Ow!
Alright, so Norberto said when he was in second grade, people started calling him gay. He didn't even know what it meant. And I said, why did they start calling you gay? He said, well, because the boys on the playground, they were wrestling and stuff and playing kickball, and I was doing jump rope with the girls and stuff. And the way I talked and stuff, he said, people think I make this voice up because I'm gay, but I always talk like this. So he said when he researched what gay meant, then he realized
He was
I'm gay. Anyway, who disagrees that people are born gay? Which one of you guys thinks that people aren't born gay?
They aren't born. They aren't born.
Tell me why.
Because it's like the same. Like, it goes back to like how you're born innocent. Like you're basically taught or influenced on it. Like some kids are easier to manipulate than adults are.
That's true. That
So
is
like
true.
it all like, reflects back on like
Why are you like
all
this
the people because like what they do in front of kids, like the kids like they'll do it back. Like say like your little brother, like once you go out, they don't want to go with you because they see that you're leaving, so they want to.
Do you have a younger brother?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I think my brother gay.
I think
Alright, now listen. Hey, so
Then you fuck your little.
I don't want to talk about that right now. Like, that's not the main point of me bringing that up. I just wanted to say philosophers are people who ask these big questions that there's a lot of disagreement on.
Oh, why are buildings called buildings if they're already built?
Shut the fuck up.
Dumb.
Now, so let me tell you a story about this guy Aristotle. So, in ancient Greece, there were slaves. And by the way, these slaves were white in Greece. Anybody ever been to Greece in here? Has anybody ever been to Greece?
Google Maps.
That's Stefan.
You been to Greece?
I've been to Pompeii.
No, we were gonna go.
Miss, I've been to Pompeii, Missy.
Well, if you go to Greece, you're going to see a lot of white people there. Now, that's Greece has always been predominantly white. And they used to have, so just so you know, it wasn't always blacks that were enslaved.
Wait, where's Greece?
The only people, it's in Europe, Rome. The only people in America to be slaves were blacks. There was no white slaves in America. But in other parts of the world, there were white slaves. And also, let me just say this.
Please elaborate.
Okay.
Greece.
Mister, actually, I think I did.
You did go?
No, she didn't. She's just lying.
Let me see about pictures.
She cabin in the ground.
You should.
She flexing.
Where else did you go in Europe?
I went to where that old place is at.
Colosseum? What old place? Nigga, what?
I went to where the fountains are at, and
Italy? Yeah. You like a fan of Colosseum?
huh?
Did you see like the Roman Colosseum?
Yeah, and I went to Rome because it says Rome, Roma, Italy.
Yeah, it's Italy.
Exactly.
Greece is in Italy.
So Greece is right by. Here's Italy. Greece is right here in Europe. Now listen.
Yeah, because she was in the Colosseum.
Okay, guys.
She looked cheap.
The people that inhabited Europe for a long time, no matter what nation you go to in Europe, the people there are white. And that's how it was for thousands of years in Europe. The people there are white. Now, Greece used to be bigger than what it was. But in Greece, you had different cities. And those cities didn't always like each other. So sometimes they would go to war, and one side would win, and they would capture other white people and make them into slaves. Now, the same thing in Africa. Look at Africa today. There's hella countries in Africa. Within all those countries, there's many different tribes. In Africa, there's probably thousands of different languages. Danielson, when a war happens, what happens to people who lose? Everybody who loses dies?
Punishment.
No, they get.
Go
Wait,
back
what did you
home.
ask?
Oh, I know.
They go back home?
Punishment.
I think when they
Treaty
were
of Versailles,
that
mister.
the people who lose, they had to pay like to.
They might have to pay or something. You
Treaty
said
of
punishment?
Versailles.
Guys, if you lose, what happens sometimes in war? You surrender. What happens to the people that surrender? Sometimes
taking hostages.
they take them as hostages. They take them as
Prisoners of war.
slaves. Prisoners of war.
Prisoners of war.
Guys, in Africa, hella black people enslaved other black people.
Gilbertson.
What are you saying whoa for? I'll say that again. In Africa, black people enslaved other black people. And you know what? It's actually, when whites came over to Africa,
Excuse me.
they just bought black people from other blacks.
Oh, it's like.
Hey gentlemen, I'm not gonna warn you guys again. Stand up and do something stupid again, you're both out again. Hey, and I'll call Almeida too.
Yeah, look at you. Yo, notice at me again.
Shut up, fat man, Dan.
Yo, you see it? No.
Don't stand up again, seriously.
Go Fable Live.
I've never seen my blood.
Let me correct a historical misconception right now. Because students seem to not understand this. People think, how did we get black slaves in America? And they usually think that white people came over to Europe and they captured blacks from Africa and then brought them to America. That's not exactly how it happened. Instead, what happened was this. White people came over to Europe and they're like, yo, let's trade. You guys got some slaves, right? Give us your slaves, we'll give you some gold, we'll give you some alcohol, we'll give you some weapons, some guns and stuff. You guys don't have guns. And you give us some blacks. And then they took the blacks that they paid for and brought them to the Americas. So just so you know, blacks enslaved other blacks. Whites enslaved other whites, too. It wasn't just white enslaving blacks. Anyway, so this guy, Aristotle, back in ancient Greece, before Jesus was born, he's looking at slaves. And he says, the reason why these people are slaves is because they're weak, submissive, they don't even have any opinions of their own. What does it mean, Teresa? What does it mean to be submissive? Gilbert, what does it mean to be submissive?
Like, you look up to people like you're easily manipulated, basically. Like,
Kind of, yeah, easily manipulated. Yes, master, I'll do whatever you say. Yes, master, yes, master. Was Solomon,
always says yes.
was Solomon submissive in the beginning of the movie?
no.
But was he at the end?
Yes.
Most definitely.
Because he realized it was a matter of life or death.
Yeah, if I want to keep my life,
He has
I don't
to
want
do
to
what
die.
he has, please.
I just better be submissive. Listen to what they tell me.
What did you say?
But guys, let me tell you why Aristotle was wrong.
What?
Aristotle believed that the reason why people were slaves is because they were weak and submissive. They need help. They can't live life unless somebody's ruling over them the whole time. They're naturally dumb and stuff, and that's why they need to be a slave. They need to have somebody else running their life. But Aristotle mistook the symptom for the cause. He thought that their symptoms made them slaves. But actually, it's because they were slaves why they were being submissive. And just look at Solomon, for example. He's a great case in point. In the beginning of the movie, he's smart, he's teaching people, he's sharing his opinions and stuff. He makes money for himself. He's got a decent life with him and his family. And at the end, he's all hunched over, barely can look at the master directly in the eye. Yes, master. He says to that guy, Judge Turner says to him, Solomon, you know, growing sugar is very natural to you. Have you ever been educated before? He says, no, master. Slaves are born to work, not born to learn. Now, obviously, he's lying, but he's being submissive on purpose. So, one of those Socrates questions is this. Why did smart philosophers like Aristotle believe that some people were naturally born to be slaves?
Because
He mistook the symptoms for the cause, and I'd like you to explain what that means exactly, and how he was wrong about that. All right. Tell me if you ever had to sing this song when you were younger in school.
No? Oh my God, you probably deleted everything. No, I think it was
It's okay.
I think you did.
Alright, stop. No, you see this?
I sung that before.
You sung that before.
I never sung that.
Let's talk about some of those lyrics.
Can you watch the video?
Video.
Danny,
I'll send the
Danny,
video to you guys.
really did?
Alright, listen.
I was just doing this.
My country, 'tis of the sweet land of liberty. What does liberty mean? Don't anybody call out. What does liberty mean?
I don't get
How do you not know this? Kimberly, what's liberty mean?
Freedom,
What
what is
does
that freedom?
liberty mean?
Freedom!
The state of being freedom in society from
He said freedom! Yeah, my man's right. I demand
Who said that? Who told him?
Nobody, he just said it.
Mister, my Siri said it. Shut up,
We
Siri.
got proof.
Move.
Nice one.
The best synonym for liberty is freedom. Now, there's this idea that America was born upon freedom. And this country is different. This is the land of the free. What's the Star Spangled Banner? Land of the free and the home of the brave.
Oh yeah, you let me see it.
Sing it, bro. But I'm here to tell you, that's a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah.
Hear me out. All right, look up at me. You gotta look. Look. All right. Slave owner.
Slave owner.
Now look at your phone. Look at me.
I'm looking at you.
No, you're not.
I
Look at your
was. Yes,
phone,
I
cuz.
was. No,
I'm not
cuz.
looking at my phone, cuz.
Slave owner. Slave owner. Slave owner. Slave owner. Slave owner. Slave
All the way
owner.
to-
Slave owner. Slave owner. Slave owner.
Abraham Lincoln has
Slave
slaves,
owner.
mister.
That's actually not true. I don't know why Speaks and Lizard think that.
So wait, Mr. President, like own slaves also?
Trump got slaves.
Yeah, 10 out of the first 12 owned slaves.
I never knew that.
George Washington's got a school in Elizabeth named after him. Hundreds of slaves. Thomas Jefferson wrote this. This is from what?
A Declaration of Independence.
Mr. D made you guys study that lecture, I think.
Yeah.
No,
Can you read it for me a second?
Definitely did.
Sure, why not?
he probably did.
Which
Huh?
one?
Truth to be self-evident
Which
that all
one?
men are
This one, we
created equal,
hold-
that they are endowed.
We hold these truths to be self-evident.
Evident. That all
men are created equal. That they are endowed by their creator with certain
unalienable rights.
that among these are lives, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Think about that. A guy who owns hundreds of slaves is saying that all men are created equal. Huh.
Mister, they made me
What are
see
your
the
thoughts
song
when you
about
hear about that, Alex?
Hypocrite!
Hypocrite. Hypocrisy. I think that Big Aaron,
Big Aaron. Yeah, baby.
Ronald,
Oh,
he's gonna make you guys, I think you guys gotta write an essay.
We gotta write like 5 essays, bro. I hate
Mister,
5.
step in the frame.
Oh,
Listen to me.
get your step in the frame.
Kimberly can move it.
But
See?
you keep
Look, you're mad
moving.
lazy, bro.
Bro, the kids are supposed to be in this too. What are you
For
talking about?
kids. No,
Okay,
kids.
You're supposed to move.
I'm more important.
Okay,
I'm a
you
star of the
got it,
show
big
right
bro.
now.
No, you're not.
Racist.
Oh yeah? How am I racist?
Because I'm white.
Because I'm the only white guy here?
No, you're not.
I don't think so.
Okay, listen.
Which one?
Aron was gonna make you guys read something that Thomas Jefferson wrote called Notes on the State of Virginia, in which Thomas Jefferson spoke about how like blacks are naturally like inferior to whites, their brain's smaller, they're not as smart and things like that.
Spoiler alert.
That's not true.
I'm telling you what Thomas Jefferson said.
Well, he needs to
Now-
stop.
Well,
He's dead, motherfucker.
Now listen to me.
Shut up.
Hey, why?
Why am I mentioning these guys? Well, oftentimes when American history is taught, it's taught from this great man theory of history. These guys, these founding fathers,
It
these
makes us
so-called,
think they were good.
they were so good and they made us
Yeah.
free. They got schools named after them. George Washington's got a school in Elizabeth named after him. Thomas Jefferson does.
Christopher Columbus.
James Madison does.
Christopher
James
Columbus was
Monroe
a-
does.
Oh wait.
Yeah.
Columbus, I mean, etc. There's hella presidents have schools named after them. Ronald Reagan,
Because their parents were.
Woodrow Wilson, Roosevelt. Guys, so many of the first presidents, 10 out of 12, that's more than 80%
They were
of the
bad.
first presidents owned slaves. Now, if you look at this quote, it says 8 out of the first 12. And the reason why it says 8 out of the first 12 is 2 of these guys, these 2, they owned slaves at one point in their life, but by the time they became president, they didn't have slaves anymore. So that's why it says 8 out of the first 12. But nevertheless, most of the first presidents were slave owners. And so much of the American economy was based on slave labor. So what I'm saying is, when people tell you that America was founded upon liberty and freedom for all, it's bullshit. What did I say was bullshit? Tell me. Back up your statement. Little tough guy.
Wait.
He's a man, baby.
Alright. Teamwork on 3. 1, 2, 3. Go ahead.
Alright,
That was
he's got nothing to say.
unnecessary.
Alright, now, as I told you guys, another common phrase that we hear. Alright, so one of the questions on soccer is, I think it says something like, why is the notion that America was conceived in liberty hypocritical? Well, look at how it says all men are created equal. We said from the very beginning, the very first day that America existed as a country, we said in the document that we wrote that signified our independence, all men are created equal. Did the people really think all men were created equal?
No.
10 out of the first 12 presidents were slave owners? And we'll talk about the U.S. Constitution in a little bit and how that also plays into this. Now they say that America's the land of the free.
I don't
But
think
that's-
so. I think that the
I don't
United
think so. That's
States,
the third time you said it today.
I think that the United States is the most corrupted
Really?
state. Yes,
What?
actually.
More corrupt than Colombia?
They got the fastest
I don't know.
network.
I don't know, but I really think that this. I don't like it.
Who's the president of Colombia? Uribe?
I think.
The government of Colombia deal drugs.
Huh.
Don't ask me how I know.
Cocaina?
Pablo Escobar was the GOAT.
Pablo Escobar was not.
All right, now listen. Here's what I'm saying. All right, so,
Exactly.
He was Mexican.
Kimberly, you know what the Underground Railroad was?
Yeah.
That's
What was it, Kimberly?
Harriet Tubman Smith.
and brought out she was saving slaves.
Yes.
She
They had
was
codes too with
she
the lights,
helped.
mister. They had codes with the lights and everything.
Yes. Now this was to rescue slaves. Now, what if I told you that it wasn't ideal to bring slaves from south to the northern part of the United States, because bringing slaves to the northern part of the United States wasn't even safe. They had these things called fugitive slave laws, which I'll talk about in more detail a little later. But what that basically said was, let's say he's a slave. And he escapes and gets to the north. You're a slave in Georgia. And then
I'm a slave.
you get to the north, and you go and you stay with Andy. Andy lives in New York. Now, New York is a free state. Georgia's a slave state. If they caught Andy keeping you,
Wouldn't he get into problems?
they'd throw his ass in jail and fine him. And your ass would get sold back in slavery. Because there were laws called the fugitive slave laws. And by the way, the people that caught you would get hell of bread to catch you. Slave catchers.
That's like when they went wanted and they put a price.
Like Ghostbusters. Bounty Hunter. Like Ghostbusters.
So what did slaves do many times? They didn't just go to the northern part of the United States. They went to Canada. Because they knew they'd be safer in Canada.
Underground Railroad.
And also, not just Canada, but in the early part of American history, Florida was not yet a state. Florida was owned by who?
The North.
No.
The west,
Mexico.
east, west.
The east, the west, no, country.
By Mexico.
Oh, Mexico.
You said
Mexico wasn't a country yet.
New Mexico.
Europe.
He said
New Mexico.
New Jersey.
Mexico,
The United States.
it was a colony.
Go for Mexico.
Bro, it was an island.
Virginia.
Africa.
Bahamas.
Who did Columbus sail for?
Which is
Spanish. The Spanish used to own Florida. So some of the slaves that were like really, really far south, they would go to Florida, which was owned by the Spanish, because the Spanish would give them freedom if they made it to Florida, Spanish Florida.
Yeah, they'll give, they offer Columbus 10% or whatever he found.
Yeah, but Columbus actually never made it to Florida. I just said that to get you guys to guess Spain.
He made it like to.
Oh, I think that's scary.
So think about that for a moment.
Yeah.
Two countries, Canada and Spain, in a sense, even at that time, were freer than America. Because slaves would try to get their freedom by going to those places. So to call the United States the land of the free is also kind of a little wrong. When you think about it like that. Let's see.
Yo, shut up.
All right. Now, remind me.
Okay.
So, honestly, truthfully, you should be able to answer 4 questions. Number 1, did racism cause slavery or did slavery cause racism? That's on soccer right now as we speak.
The answer was both.
Correct, Kiyoman. Why did smart philosophers like Aristotle believe that some people were naturally born to be slaves? He mistook the symptoms for the cause, but I want a little bit more than that if you want to get that question right. All right. America, conceived in liberty, born in freedom? Why is that hypocritical? Why does that not make sense? America, land of the free? Why does that not make sense as well? Yes, Danny.
Because, like, this part of America used to have own slaves.
Which part?
The South.
The South.
And the North was like the free land, basically.
And what did the slaves do?
The slaves, like, wait, what do you think?
What did the slaves do to try to help themselves?
Work.
Alright, now some slaves that were brave enough, they would escape to Canada or Florida,
Oh, yeah.
which was owned by Spain at the time.
They followed the North Star to get there.
Yeah. Alright. You can stop the recording for today.